What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I got some updates. I want to talk about the depth chart that got put out yesterday. We're going to comb through that a bit. There's some interesting stuff on there, so we'll see how that shakes out. But also, there is another high-profile player that has decided to opt out of the 2020 season. And so I want to talk about him and another one actually as well, because I want to tie it into a mock draft that was done recently and kind of give you an idea, a little bit clearer of an idea and a picture on how it's going to affect the draft, right? Because it's a couple high profile players that are expected to go high in the draft, but they're going to be missing this entire season, and so they're not going to have, game tape. The only preparation they're going to have is just whatever they do on their own, combine style stuff and, regular normal workouts, but they're not going to be playing football at all, so they're not going to, be in football shape really at all this season, etc., etc., and there's going to be an entire year's worth of game tape missing, non-existent, because they're not playing. Anyway, so let's get into that. We're going to start there, and then we'll get into the depth chart. So first we'll talk about the new player that has decided to opt out of the 2020 college football season, and that's Oregon's Sewell. Opts out of 2020 college football season to prepare for the 2021 NFL draft. Oregon offensive tackle Sewell announced Monday he will opt out of the college football season and focus on the 2021 draft. The Pac-12 announced in August it would postpone all sports, including college football, through the end of the calendar year. Players get out a year of eligibility heading into 2021, but Sewell will leave after just 2 seasons in college. Bleacher Report's Matt Miller lists the lineman as a top 5 player in the 2021 class. In his latest mock draft, Miller predicted Sewell, well, we'll get to that. We'll talk about that in a second, but he's in the top 5. The 6'6", 330-pound player made an immediate impact after coming to Oregon, starting week 1 as a true freshman in 2018. Though he missed some time due to injury, he was a reliable presence for the Ducks during his first season. He truly took over as a sophomore, becoming a consensus All-American while winning the Outland Trophy as the best interior lineman in the nation. Pro Football Focus listed him as the highest graded player in college football last season at any position. Despite not playing in 2020, Sewell should remain a top prospect heading into next year's draft and could be one of the first players off the board. So he's projected to be the offensive lineman in the 2021 NFL draft. Another player I want to talk about, because he's actually linked to the Dolphins in that same mock draft that was done, and I'll get to that in just a minute, but is Miami University's Greg Rousseau opting out of the 2020 college football season. So let's give you a reminder of that. Miami edge rusher Greg Rousseau has informed Hurricanes coach Manny Diaz that he will opt out of the 2020 college football season, becoming the latest high-profile prospect to skip fall competition amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So this was, whenever this was written on August 6th, this writer wrote this, right? So obviously that was over a month ago, or right around a month ago. So that's old news. But Gregory Rousseau has also opted out, obviously a month ago, and now 2 of the top 10 prospects, according to this mock draft that I'm about to discuss with you, are now out of the college football season and are going to be missing an entire year's worth of football in which they could put more game tape out there, but not just that, but also continue to develop their craft, right? In like real games with competition where you're actually like going for like full steam ahead, etc., and you're in football shape, etc., right? Like all of those things. They're not going to have that. They're going to be doing like combine style, workouts and preparation. They're going to be, I'm sure they'll put out like training videos of them doing, whatever, like, because there's social media, and of course they're going to do that. But like, it's not going to be anywhere close to the same, right? So it's huge. It's gonna be a massive impact on the upcoming season and their development and the draft, right? Anyway, so in this mock draft, He has the Jacksonville Jaguars taking quarterback Trevor Lawrence from Clemson at number 1. Then he has Washington football team, since they still don't actually have a name right now, quarterback Trey Lance from NDSU going at number 2. Then at number 3, he has Cincinnati Bengals taking offensive tackle Penei Sewell from Oregon. And this is what he says. Unlike the situations in Jacksonville and Washington, it's highly unlikely a poor record in Cincinnati would mean moving on from Joe Burrow. Oh, hell no. Of course not. Instead, 1 year after selecting the superstar quarterback, the Bengals are tasked with building an offense around the number 1 overall pick. And of course, that's what you would do with any quarterback. Of course, you guys know my philosophy. I wouldn't ever take one in rounds 1 or 2, but I would take one every year in 3 or later. But I would then use a lot of those other higher resources to take guys like, let's say, Penei Sewell, right, to build up like a beast offensive line around him, right? And then not just offensive line. I mean, obviously you would take like maybe a top running back 1 year, right? Or, a top receiver 1 year. Just depends on what exactly you need that year and in that situation. And then, of course, how the board plays out, how the draft plays out. Is it a really good year for receivers? Can you get good receivers later on? What's the value, right? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into that decision. And if I'm being honest, from my position and from my perspective, the Dolphins organization as it stands with Stephen Ross down to Flores, Chris Greer, Marvin Allen, and Reggie McKenzie in between, they're terrible. So far, we'll see. Their first draft wasn't all that great. Their second draft is off to a rocky start considering they already lost one of their guys. Look, man, they got a lot to prove. So we'll see. Anyway, let's continue on with his analysis here. The offensive line in Cincinnati isn't terrible, but there is room for improvement. One quick fix would be selecting a left tackle and allowing 2019 first-rounder Jonah Williams to play at the right tackle position. This would allow the 5 best linemen to get on the field while putting Williams in a position most scouts believed he was best suited to play coming out of college. The top left tackle on my board comes from Oregon, where, as it stands today, we won't see football this fall. That shouldn't affect Penei Sewell's draft stock. A 2-year start at Oregon, he has the combination of athleticism and strength that teams fall for quickly. Yes, there are already questions about arm length, but in selecting Williams before him, the Bengals showed they're more concerned with play than measurements. Sewell protecting Burrow's blind side is the move the team has to make if the Bengals are locked in at the number 3 overall. And that analysis to me is not just, good on like, the measure, describing the player and like the raw physical ability and stuff like that, but also showing, some of the like the tactics behind it, right? Like why you pick this guy and why it makes sense to pick this guy and how to, whatever. Anyway, I'm not explaining that anywhere near appropriately, but I think you guys can understand. So that totally would make sense. And so, we'll see, right? Let's see. 4, they have the Panthers taking quarterback Justin Fields from Ohio. At 5, the Jets are slated to take wide receiver Jamar Chase from LSU. At 6, the Giants are slated to take Micah Parsons, linebacker from Penn State, who also has opted out of the 2020 NFL season, or excuse me, college football season. I remember doing that as well. So 3 already of the top 10 players right there have opted out of the season. Of course, in the case of Oregon, their entire team is opted out, so there's that. But still, right? He's already announced that he is not extending his eligibility and will not be doing another year at college or at Oregon playing football. Anyway, and then number 7 comes in Miami Dolphins, because we're slated to have in this mock draft the number 7th overall pick, edge Gregory Rousseau from Miami. The rebuild of the Miami Dolphins has been impressive. I completely disagree with that, but they have an opportunity to prove me wrong. We'll see how, but at the same time though, it's funny because if we're picking at number 7 overall, we're slated to have we're as per like almost all sources I've seen, we're supposed to have somewhere around 5 wins that doesn't really seem to me like, especially with, you know, bringing in Tua and these guys, you know, Byron Jones and blah, 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 like, you know, like, they have a pretty, like, they have big shoes to fill already, like their own. Like, they've been given big shoes to wear, not really like anybody in particular live up to. They just have massive expectations on them. And I think that they're going to fall far short of that. But even this would prove that. If they're picking 7th overall, after just having picked 5th overall, being a 5-win team, I mean, like, you know, and the Browns, again, are the best example of a team who, you know, has been stuck in the top fucking whatever 10 picks for however long, accumulating all this talent, who, you know, tanked. Well, how well has that worked out for them? It hasn't. Anyway, let's finish this. Head coach Brian Flores and general manager Chris Greer have put the team in position to compete in the AFC East ahead of schedule. We'll see about that. Now, with 2 more picks coming in the 2020 first round, the franchise is poised to put together a draft class that will make it a complete team. Okay, pause right there. That has yet to be seen. 2, they're already giving away picks from next year and digging into their cash for the 2021 season or the 2021 draft. Additionally, I'm not the only one. I mean, I have seen reports and you know, analysts and people in the media and so on and so forth talk about how they think, you know, several of the players that they took from this year's draft are reaches, etc., etc. I think that their priorities are totally out of fucking whack. They take a lot of guys that tend to be injury prone. A lot of these things are and I think, you know, several of the guys like, you know, Shaq Lawson and Eric Flowers, whatever, are overpaid players, and I think they're going to prove that. So, you know, but again, they can prove me wrong, but there are definitely, look, until they do, though, they don't really get to claim anything, right? So people can, like, call me negative all they want, but I'm just looking at the data that I have. And the data, is a lot of reason for doubt and concern. A lot. There's a lot of reason for it. Okay, but there's also, to be fair, you know, some high upside and you know, some reason for optimism and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, they have to prove it to get it, right? And so, anyway, let's finish with this little analysis here. Grabbing the top pass rusher in the draft class from their own backyard is something the Dolphins should get on board with. I would be, you know, totally fine with that if they took him, honestly. We'll see what happens. An opt-out player for the 2020 season, Rousseau was a sight in 2019 with 19.5 tackles for loss and 15.5 sacks coming from the edge and the nose. With a 6'7", 265-pound frame, he is ready for Flores' defense right now. And I would agree with that, honestly, but we'll see. I mean, with the way that they've been prioritizing things, I wouldn't put it past them to not take him. Like, I don't know, but whatever. After loading up on linemen in the 2020 draft and patching holes via free agency on defense, the Dolphins might just be one elite pass rusher away from a division title. Yeah, again, that is, but see, that's what I'm saying, right? Like, that analysis, though, proves the point. He's like, oh, we're going to be competing ahead. So even though he has us picking at 7th overall, I mean, it doesn't mesh, right? Like, it doesn't calculate. Because he's saying that we're like ahead of schedule. So by that analysis, then we should at least be an improvement from last year, probably somewhere more in the middle of the pack, maybe an 8-8 team, maybe even a 9-7 team. Because, you know, if we're ahead of schedule, then we would ideally be not necessarily getting into the playoffs, even with the expanded 14 team system. But we would at least be getting closer than 5 or 6 wins. So, like, it doesn't really make sense. But then he's also then saying, which you would need to be. You would need to be getting to that position this season. You would need to prove that your team can get to 8 or 9 wins this year to then be able to say, okay, in the 2021 draft, all we need is that stud pass rusher, Gregory Rousseau, who apparently we're taking at 7th overall, which if we're picking at 7th, that doesn't mean we got 8 or 9 wins. It just doesn't. That's in the top 10. It's the 7th overall pick. If you get 8 or 9 wins and you're in the middle of the fucking pack, you're going to be in the middle of the pack in picks. It just doesn't add up. But anyway, so if you're just that one pass rusher away, then, you know, whatever. Like, anyway, whatever. You get it. It just doesn't make sense. It's crazy. Because we wouldn't even be able to. We wouldn't even be able to pick him. If we were on schedule and if we were then ready to fucking take that guy and fucking compete for a division title and, you know, get into the playoffs and so on and so forth, we would need to be able to get him to get to that point. But if we're picking at 7th, then we haven't made the necessary progress that we need to. Anyway, so let's see. Let's go ahead now and shift gears a bit because I want to talk about the depth chart and look at the team as it stands. So like I said, there are concerns. So first off, we're going to go with the offensive depth chart. You start with left tackle is Austin Jackson, left guard Eric Flowers, center Ted Karras, right guard is slated to be Solomon Kinley, and right tackle is Jesse Davis. So looking at that, Austin Jackson, again, just real quick, I would have done the draft way differently. I would have done last year's draft way differently. If we would have done it my way, we would have still had Ryan Tannehill. We would have had the top offensive lineman from last year's draft in round 1. We would have had the top defensive lineman we could get at that point in round 2. Then we would have taken Will Grier to bring up behind Ryan Tannehill in round 3. But then this year they could have... you know, we didn't do that. This year, I would have taken, instead of Tua and Austin Jackson, I would have taken the top 2 offensive linemen because of how the situation was. If we would have done what I would have done in last year's draft, obviously it would have changed things around and how I would have done things in the 2020 draft. But as it stood going into the 2020 draft, I would have taken, instead of Tua and Austin Jackson, the top 2 offensive linemen. Instead of Noah Igbenogene as our third first round pick, I would have taken the top safety, Xavier McKinney. And then I would have taken J.K. Dobbins, the top running back, with our first second round pick, right? That didn't happen. So Austin Jackson, in other words, I believe to be a bit of a reach. He's a rookie. He's got a high learning curve that he's going to need to live up to. I mean, it's going to be tough going up against the kind of defensive linemen that the NFL has to offer in your rookie season day 1. Okay, and there are 2 rookies on this offensive line, Austin Jackson and Solomon Kinley, so that's going to apply to both. So there are serious concerns there. No matter how good they may end up eventually being, it's going to be tough for them. Okay, so there's that. Even if they're not reaches, even if the Dolphins are excellent in their evaluations, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and then, you know, you also have the fact that you have a completely fucked up offseason. With this team in particular, the entire coaching staff pretty much is new. The entire team is pretty much new with all new fucking schemes, etc. So the chemistry is going to be like almost non-existent because there literally has been no time. They've had a few weeks of training camp. That's it. Like, it's impossible. Whereas, you know, other teams that have more consistent and established rosters are going to have a more natural cohesion and chemistry than this Dolphins roster could ever hope for, right? So there's that, okay? And then Julian Davenport, who I think is pretty garbage, is backing up Austin Jackson. There's nobody technically backing up Eric Flowers on the depth chart, but I think Eric Flowers is going to prove to be overpaid. It is possible he could prove to be, I would say, I mean, it would be hard to imagine he's not one of the top 3 offensive linemen just because he's one of the veterans, just from that simple perspective. But, you know, Ted Karras is likely going to be up there, and I don't know about Jesse Davis. Like, he did not do very well at right tackle last season. So that's highly concerning with Davis there. Solomon Kinley at right guard obviously has the rookie issues, etc., etc., etc. I think Ted Karras will likely be the best offensive line. lineman we have. He's the center we got from New England, and they didn't have to pay him that much. I actually thought that was a good pickup. But Michael Dieter's backing him up, so I guess he's proven to be, last year he proved to be trash at left guard. So I guess the Dolphins are like, well, our third round pick from last year was trash. We're going to try moving him over to now in a completely different position with actually far more responsibility at center and see how that works. Now, he's only the backup, so we'll see. Hopefully Ted Karras doesn't get hurt, because it could be a disaster if Michael Dieter comes in. Who knows? Then you have Adam Pankey. I don't really know much about him, but he's backing up Solomon Kinley. And then Robert Hunt, the other rookie offensive lineman that we picked up in this draft, who I thought all of these, anyway, I would have taken the top 2 offensive linemen, and then none of these guys would be on the roster. But Robert Hunt is backing up Jesse Davis. Okay, so that's our offensive line. Now let's take a look at wide receivers. So the starting wide receivers are slated as Preston Williams and Devontae Parker on the outside. Okay, cool. Because we do have a fullback in the starting lineup, which is Chandler Cox. Anyway, but so we have Devontae Parker and Preston Williams are the top 2 receivers listed on the depth chart. Makes sense, okay? And then you have Jakeem Grant and Isaiah Ford backing them up. Now, I would say that likely one of those guys or both of those guys will get extensive work in the slot. Is it also, if they ever do 3 and 4 wide receiver sets, any of those packages, whatever, right? And then you have Malcolm Perry behind Grant and Lynn Bowden Jr. listed as a wide receiver behind Malcolm Perry, with Mac Hollins listed behind Isaiah Ford. Now, the biggest issue, especially with those top 4 receivers there, Preston Williams, Devontae Parker, Jakeem Grant, and Isaiah Ford, is their injury history. It's pretty extensive for each one of them, except for Preston Williams, but he has a major injury. He's coming off of an ACL. So that's going to need to be monitored, etc. So the health of our top 4 wide receivers is quite concerning. Anyway, so we'll have to see how that plays out, especially too because Devontae Parker and Jakeem Grant have already been dealing with some injuries just in training camp, right? And unfortunately, it's likely that we could see an uptick in injuries overall in the NFL because of the fucked up offseason, etc. Anyway, so then you have Chandler Cox at fullback. I actually kind of like the kid. We'll see how much they use him. They didn't really use him last year. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Running back, Jordan Howard is listed as the starter, which is not really surprising, but him and Matt Breida are expected to, share the load. Jordan Howard, though, from what I can tell, is expected to get the bulk of the carries. And then you have Myles Gaskin and Patrick Laird after that. Tight end, you have Durham Smythe leading the way on the depth chart, with Mike Gesicki and Adam Shaheen coming behind them. But of course, Mike Gesicki is expected to get plenty of playing time. Last year he actually did line up a lot as a wide receiver and in the slot. So there is also a high potential for him to line up in those positions as well this season. So you would expect Mike Gesicki to get plenty of playing time. Additionally, Chan Gailey is supposedly has a lot more, run stuff in his schemes or whatever. And so especially if the offensive line does struggle like it is very likely to do, then they will need somebody to also help block, which Durham Smythe is super useful for. Again, I really liked that tight end combo that Gase brought in of Mike Gesicki and Durham Smythe. Durham Smythe being the blocker and Mike Gesicki being the pass catcher, and then you just round out their games individually, so that way they can contribute in the other phase, right? And Adam Gase did that with those guys. He helped Durham Smythe improve his pass catching, and his coaching staff helped Mike Gesicki, unquestionably helped him get better at his blocking in his first season. Anyway, so those are the tight ends and the situation there. And then, of course, As we already know, Ryan Fitzpatrick is slated as the starter and Tua is slated as the backup. But they are, and we do have Jake Rudock on the practice squad. But with those guys only having those two quarterbacks, they're only going to go into games with them dressed. Jake Rudock's not going to be dressed, right? Because he's on the practice squad. So that means if the offensive line is not good and Ryan Fitzpatrick gets battered, and either one of two things happens, right? Either, and it literally this, I'm going to say a lot of the same things that I said last season because there are a lot of the same factors present this year, and which leads to the same analysis and conclusion. But so what's likely to happen is the offensive line, or the offensive line's not going to play all that well. Even if the players on the offensive line end up being world beaters in a couple years from now, it's impossible to think that they're going to be there now with all the different factors. So they're likely not going to be very good. And if that's the case, that means likely they're going to get off the field a lot. The defense, the Dolphins defense, is going to have to stay on the field way too much. They're going to get their asses handed to them quite a bit. They're going to experience probably more injuries overall on the defense because of that. And also, Ryan Fitzpatrick is likely going to be on the run quite a bit. And he's old as balls, bro. The dude is a fucking relic in the NFL at this point, right? So is Tom Brady, sure, but Tom Brady doesn't, I mean, up to this point, we'll have to see how it plays out in Tampa Bay, but on the Patriots, he didn't get harassed all that much, right? He's almost always historically had tons of time to throw when needed to throw, you know, longer, but always gets the ball out super quick. So he doesn't have to run. Ryan Fitzpatrick is likely going to be on the run. So either Tua's going to end up coming in almost undoubtedly at some point, either because Ryan Fitzpatrick gets the shit knocked out of him or because the team is just so garbage after a few games that, you know, there's clamoring for Tua and, oh, we just need a spark and blah, blah, blah. And then Tua's going to end up going in. If that happens, well, then my biggest fear is on the board is that Tua will then be under pressure and duress a lot and get injured somewhere along the way. To be clear, because there are idiots that will somehow twist my words into it being this, I don't want him to get injured, obviously. But my biggest fear is that if he has to go in, especially the earlier in the season that it is, well, frankly, it might not even matter because it depends on how injuries play out and so on and so forth, too. I mean, we could just get fucking ravished by injuries and the team just could end up being just absolute trash the whole year. Anyway, point is, though, my biggest fear is that if he goes in, he's going to end up, you know, just getting mauled, man, and then he's going to get hurt, and then it's just going to be a fucking disaster for this Dolphins team. And then if that happens, bro, if Tua ends up forced in because he's the only quarterback dressed on the roster, and let's say Ryan Fitzpatrick gets fucking, you know, hurt somehow in the first couple games and he has to go in and then he gets hurt, I mean, it's a fucking mess, bro. So, anyway. Real quick, let's just run through specialists, the depth chart there. Most of it's not really a surprise. Kickers, Jason Sanders. Punter, Matt Hawk. Kickoffs, Jason Sanders, obviously. Holder, Matt Hawk. Long snapper, Blake Ferguson. Obviously. Kickoff return and punt return is Jakeem Grant, with Noah Igbenogene coming behind him on kickoff returns, and Preston Williams on punt returns, with Malcolm Perry behind Preston Williams on punt returns. It wouldn't be a surprise to see Lynn Bowden Jr. in there at some point too. We'll have to see. Nothing really a surprise there. All right, so defensively, now let's move on to the defensive depth chart. So we'll start with the defensive line. So since we are moving more towards a base 3-4 defense, obviously, you know, Brian Flores, whatever, likes to have some fucking hybrid amoeba, moldy, fucking whatever shit. Got it. Okay, cool. But at least as per the depth chart, we are aligned in a base 3-4 defense. So our defensive ends are Christian Wilkins and Emmanuel Ogbah. Okay, well, I'm going to stop there for a second and evaluate. So with Devon Godshaw as our nose tackle, I actually really like that. And then Raekwon Davis, the pick that we have, one of our, off the defensive line in this year's draft, is backing up Devon Godshaw. Now, obviously Raekwon Davis he's a rookie. He would have a lot of those same issues as the other rookies. He's only the backup, so he's not starting. Although I wouldn't be surprised if he gets playing time in a rotation there. That wouldn't be surprising at all. But he is also, at least based off of the analysis of him and his scouting report and so on and so forth, he does fit in, would fit in really well as a nose tackle. So we'll have to, and I really like Devon Godshaw. That was another, Gase guy that I really love and has done wonderful things for us. So I like that, and I like his backup. Now for the defensive ends though, Christian Wilkins is supposed to be a defensive tackle in more of a 4-3, but he can play some defensive end in a 3-4, whatever. However, that's concerning to me because last year we were absolute trash in the run game. He was part of that. Now everybody's like, oh, but Christian Wilkins, and I say that Christian Wilkins underperformed, right? But everybody's like, oh, but he was the top rookie defensive lineman in tackles. Yes, but when you look at the rest of the team and how bad we were in the run game, etc., it shows and proves, and then especially if you look at film, etc., it confirms that it wasn't so much that he and the team were stopping the ball carrier at or behind the line of scrimmage. Obviously, that didn't happen. Our pass rush was fucking terrible as well, right, last season. So it wasn't that. It was more that he showed good hustle and, played through the whistle and chased the guy down. Okay, great. That's wonderful. But he was part of the problem in the run game last season. So then to have him be a defensive end where he's got to set the edge and then also be expected to get pass rush, I'm not sure. That's a little bit concerning to me. Okay, and then Zach Seiler, he had a couple flashes last year, backs up Christian Wilkins. We'll have to see how that pans out. Again, all of these guys, though, on that defensive front are likely to get playing time. Emmanuel Ogbah, I'm betting, is going to be, and of course, also keep in mind, there is going to be a hybrid flow through of a 3-4, 4-3 defense. So there will be 4-3 alignments. Which will then, likely put like Christian Wilkins in there as a defensive tackle and then push, maybe Shaq Lawson or Landon Roberts even, or Kyle Van Noy, one of those guys out as a defensive end with their hand in the dirt or something, right? So there will be alignments like that as well. But getting back to these guys, Emmanuel Ogbah, I think is going to be another one of those, overpaid guys. That is not going to get us the production we're hoping for, and historically has just been, all right. Same thing with Shaq Lawson. I think they're both in the same boat. They've had decent production, but they were also on really good teams, right? And so Emmanuel Ogbah came from the Bills, and they've had a great fucking defense there for quite a while, including recently, right? Shaq, or was that Shaq Lawson? I might be getting them mixed up. Anyway, both of those guys, point is, were in good programs. Kyle Van Noy, though, was the... No. Shaq Lawson came from the Bills, right? Kyle Van Noy, I get all this shit mixed up. Kyle Van Noy came from the Patriots, but he was in this, definitely is the same thing. I think he had decent production in a really good Patriots defense. So, whatever. And then whichever player came from the Bills... I think Shaq Lawson came from the Bills. And I don't remember where Emmanuel Ogbah came from. Anyway, whatever. I don't want to get off on unnecessary tangents. But then we have Jason Strourbridge, who obviously is a rookie. He's a mid to late round pick, whatever. So, but he's just a backup, although likely will also get some time on the field, especially as injuries come into play. All right, so our linebackers, again, we're in a base 3-4 defense, at least as per the depth chart. So our linebackers are Shaq Lawson and Landon Roberts, Jerome Baker, and Kyle Van Noy. Obviously, you know, I personally love Jerome Baker. I take issue with the fact that they got rid of Raekwon McMillan. And with that and the Lynn Bowden trade, to me, when you put those together, the Raiders are the clear winners in both of those fucking trades, especially considering the fact that McMillan was all the fucking run defense that we had last season. So that's concerning. Also, him and Jerome Baker do play well together. But I do love Baker. Another Gase guy that I really like. Again, Kyle Van Noy, I think is going to prove to be overpaid from the production we're going to get. Certainly, if he sticks to his production historically, he's going to be overpaid. The amount of money he's getting for his historical production does not line up. Same thing with Shaq Lawson, Eric Flowers, etc. Landon Roberts, again, another one of those, you know, Patriots defenders that did well in that Patriots defense, but still just did all right, right? So he wasn't like a world beater or a superstar. Neither of those guys were. They had their role, and, you know, they played it, and they played it well within that system. And then you have Andrew Van Ginkel backing up Shaq Lawson, Calvin Munson backing up Landon Roberts, Kamu Grugier-Hill backing up Jerome Baker, who I believe is also another Patriots defender. So, I mean, like, he's just trying to, like, replicate the Patriots. I mean, and again, to be honest, I don't want that. I do not want to turn the Dolphins into the Patriots for a number of different reasons. Maybe, you know, that's just me as a Dolphins fan, but I don't want that. In part because, you know, people be like, oh, but look at all the rings, etc., etc. Yeah, but I also am a firm believer that they definitely cheated their way to a few of those rings, and I don't think that they deserve a few of those rings. So, you know, whatever. People can hate on me for that all they want. And then Sam McGuavin backs up Kyle Van Noy. For corners, we have Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. Obviously, with Nick Needham behind Byron Jones, Noah Igbenogene behind Xavier Howard, and Jamal Perry behind Noah Igbenogene. Now, Xavier Howard, obviously love him. He's great. He's wonderful. We're supposedly going to have like the best quarterback duo in the fucking league. Well, we'll see about that. I do love Xavier Howard. The big issue with him is obviously going to be health. If he can stay healthy, he's going to be the shutdown guy that we expect him to be. Or at least I expect him to be a shutdown corner who's, you know, got great ball skills. Now, Byron Jones is a bit of a shutdown corner, but lacking in the ball skills. Which is pretty concerning, because then if Xavier Howard, you know, knock on wood, whatever, should Xavier Howard get hurt, and then we're left with Byron Jones, who, you know, can break up passes or whatever, but never actually like turns the ball over. Well, then with that hole, because then Noah Igbenogene is going to go in, and he's a rookie, and he's going to get exposed. So then they just won't throw towards Byron Jones's side, right? They'll throw away from him. So then you'll completely negate everything that he's capable of. But then the problem also then becomes, not only is Noah Igbenogene, you know, a rookie, etc., but he also appears, based off of his scouting report, to be a carbon copy of Byron Jones. He has the potential to be shut down, although likely won't be this year should he get playing time, and he likely will, because of the fact that he's going to be a rookie and make tons of mistakes, probably get penalties, etc., etc. But he's apparently also not good at picking off passes and causing turnovers. So if he doesn't really have that in his game, and if this season at least he's not even really good at breaking up passes and, you know, shutting down receivers because of the fact that he's a rookie and needs to adjust, etc., then, well, he's also essentially useless, at least for now. Jamal Perry, I don't really know too much about him, so I'm going to leave that there. Let's see. And then for safeties, we have Eric Rowe and Bobby McCain. Now, I've told you guys I would have taken Xavier McKinney, the top safety in the draft, instead of Noah Igbenogene, who could prove to be completely useless, at least this season. And you could have put him in for Bobby McCain, who you could have let be a fucking slot corner. My guess is and look, Bobby McCain didn't actually even play all that great last year. He got like 1 interception before he got hurt. And then guess what? He tore his fucking shoulder, which is obviously a, consistent injury for that position. We saw it with Rashad Jones. He fucked up both of his shoulders. So look, there is a high likelihood that we don't get a whole, ton of production out of Bobby McCain. And unfortunately, my guess is, especially as the season does go on, should it, however long it continues, and if I prove it, if I'm proven correct in that the defense will spend far too much time on the field and get worn out, I think Bobby McCain's going to unfortunately get hurt again. I think he's going to be one of the injury casualties. Okay. And then, so, Eric Rowe, he was also just kind of okay. I have lots of concerns about our safeties. And then you have Clayton Fedulum, who came over in the offseason, and Kevon Frazier backing them up, with the rookie Brandon Jones backing up Kevon Frazier. So there are definitely a ton of concerns all over this roster. And unfortunately, they just need way too much to pan out in their direction, for things to work out. And unfortunately, that's just not how the world works. That's just not how football works. So my expectation is that this team, for all of the different reasons, should they even play out an entire season, however many games they play, they are not going to be very good at all. That's my expectation based off of the facts and the data. Now, obviously, as a fan, I hope that they prove me wrong. I want them to prove me wrong, etc. But they have a lot of work to do to get to that point. And the odds are absolutely stacked against them. Now, also, as far as predictions go, I personally think that 5 wins is probably their ceiling. I don't think that they're going to get higher than that. And in fact, I think that there is even a likelihood, because of all the different factors involved, that they could be worse than last year, right? They have a lot of the same issues that they had last year, a young, inexperienced team that's comprised of primarily backups, practice squad guys, undrafted free agents, etc., etc. Just a team, and then the difference is this year is then they added in what I believe to be the high-priced, high-profile free agents, whatever, and then with the fucked up offseason, the entirely new coaching staff, almost entirely new team, etc., with new schemes, lacking chemistry and cohesion across the units, it's a recipe for disaster. So that's what I'm expecting. I hope that they prove me wrong, and we'll have to wait and see, but they have to prove it. Now, I am expecting to do a live stream. Obviously, I can't show the game, but I am going to do I am expecting to do a live stream of the game. I will be watching it and giving you guys commentary, so make sure you join me for that. That is this upcoming Sunday. So be ready for that, because it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. I'm expecting to do that. There is some chance that I might not be able to do that. We'll see. But my expectation is that I'm gonna do that. If for some reason I can't, I don't want to, because I'm thinking about it as I'm saying it, and there are some factors that could potentially keep me from doing it this week. But I would expect that going forward, I will be doing live streams. If I can't, though, then I will likely do something else where, I do some kind of, I don't know. I'll figure it out and I'll let you guys know. But just know, the longer that the season goes on, for sure, I will be expecting to do live streams. And so join me for that. Most of the time, I will do videos on, pregame previews, right? So, analysis of the team. I'm not going to do that for the Patriots because, there's, a number of reasons, but there's no records yet. There's no film, none of that. So there's really no analysis to do other than it's the Patriots. But, obviously they lost a ton of players to opt-outs, etc. But we are playing in Gillette, so we'll have to see how that pans out. My guess is it's going to be a loss. And that's really the extent of the analysis. Afterwards, though, I will do a, you know, a video specifically on the post game, right? So I will, you know, I'll do a breakdown of the game with all the stats and so on and so forth. And then going forward, I will do previews with the records and the stats of the previous games, etc., for each of the different teams that we play this season, and then be doing live streams, etc. So make sure to join me for that. There could be an exception this Sunday. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, with that, guys, because now this video is hella long, there was a lot to talk about, but I'm going to get up out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I'm out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.